Don't engage him. He's just going to extort you and do that stupid head tilt thing.
Hey guys, my name's DocJade. Do you wish Factorio gave you neck pain? Well, you're in luck, because today we're beating the game with a diagonal base. Let's get started. We've got a pretty good spawn, and this is the first time I've ever seen all of the ore patches in a straight line. Ironic. Rocket debris, a severe lack of trees, rocks, and walks. As usual, in goes the basic iron setup, which I almost forgot to build diagonally. Then a loop for coal. Copper gets the same treatment, and we unlock steam power. More coal, electronics, then a small supplemental stone stockpiling setup. The early game is going to last a bit longer than usual, since building diagonal belts is going to take a lot of iron. In goes possibly the most horrendous steam setup I've ever built, and a burner inserter to fuel it. Code Green has a mod to make inserters move diagonally, so obviously I had to install it. Diagonal poles, a lab, and red science. First up to research, automation. Then electric mining drills. Drills in hand, now for military. Up and to the left has the clearest path, so we'll take the bus northwest. Now for the smelting arrays, which seem pretty sparse at first, but you can cram a third furnace in between the gaps of every diagonal pair. Military. With the furnace design done, I'll start filling it out, while also researching gun turrets and fast inserters. We'll need a smelting array for copper, iron, and steel, but I'll need splitters to move the coal around, so into the queue it goes. With hand-fed belt production going, it's time to plan out the mining setup. Oh, how am I gonna do that? Since this coal patch overlaps with the iron patch, we'll have to do mixed mining setups. Fun. I'll build it in a bit, right after I finish filling in the iron smelting setup, researching logistics, and queuing steel. I really don't like mixing ore belts, since they tend to clog pretty easily, but I'll just have to play with the cards I'm dealt, since I'm out of discards. Filter splitters in place, the coal makes its way in, the stack gets plugged in, and more iron gets hooked in. Then it's time for steel, which thanks to underground belt sideloading isn't too bad, but building these diagonal belts is quite a pain. Iron production is looking pretty happy now, and I ran a coal belt down to the boilers to keep them fed. With steel installed, I can no longer stall on copper production, which takes quite a meandering path back up, but into the furnaces it goes. Before we can continue to carry out our bus plans, we'll need to take out these biters. In goes a radar to keep tabs on everything, then I retired my armor after I made a new set. Ammo production, and I'll make some red science while I'm away. After getting my way, up comes steel, iron, and copper to make a bus with the worst alignment I have ever seen. Oh boy. Well, time for green circuits. 3-2 for the copper wire, but instead of direct corner-to-corner alignment, I ended up staggering the assemblers to make the setup a bit more compact, although this did make the belts quite interesting. In goes copper and iron, and onto the bus the circuits go. Now for gears, which makes a bit more sense than usual, since direct inserting stuff in diagonal setups is quite a pain. With those brought up, time to start setting up science. In goes the labs above green circuits, and red science will go right above that. Into the labs it goes. One short outburst of anger later, time for green science. Belts and inserters are super easy to make with gears already on the bus, just iron, green circuits, and gears. Then in goes a small belt abomination to put each item on a different side of the belt. Green science in hand, I want to make my way to flamethrowers as quickly as possible, since keeping biters outside of the pollution cloud will remove the need to defend the base with walls. So, military 2, military science, engines, assembler 2s, fluid handling, and oil gathering. To make military science, we'll need stone bricks for walls, but I don't feel like setting up a proper smelting setup, so this'll have to do. The other ingredients of military science are red ammo and grenades, which I'll make in small batches. But power is dipping, so in goes more power production. This looks so dumb. Engine, fluid handling, then I'll clear out some more space to make the engines in. Steel, gears, and pipes. Oil gathering unlocks wells of oil as well, and we'll set that up in a minute. Pipes right above gears, steel off the bus, and I remembered to start actually making the military science. For now, engines will get thrown into a chest for safekeeping, since we'll need a lot later for blue and yellow science. Pipes in hand, I ran down to oil, got my trees and rocks off, and started jacking it. Oil processing. That'll be fun. Diagonal pipes are a bit weird to do, but to keep in the spirit of the run, I'll try to bend them as much as possible. This is so stupid. Oil processing will go between steel and power production. Usually when you do oil production, you have to plan ahead by separating out the 3 types of oil, but the amount of straight lines this design ended up having was frankly unacceptable. Luckily, with the new pump filters in 2.0, you can very easily do sushi fluids. So I'll just dump all 3 outputs into the same pipe. In goes our off-axis oil, and out comes the pitched petroleum. 3 tanks and pumps to sort out the oils. Then over comes coal for plastic production, which I forgot to unlock. Diagonal belts are one thing, but doing pipes like this feels so much worse. Logistics 2 unlocks red belts, which I'll automate since we'll need them to improve our iron and copper output. Upgrading the iron patch, then the belts will double the amount of iron we can push into these smelting arrays, since a red belt is twice as fast. More labs and plastics. And now that we have oil processing unlocked, we can finish researching flamethrowers. With macroplastics manufactured, up they go to the bus. Flamethrower. To reach the nests easier, I'll research a car as well. Then a level of fire damage just for good measure. After making flamethrower ammo behind the refineries, I'll pick our targets. For the longest time, I didn't realize how powerful it was to be offensive in Factorio. I used to almost always play completely defensively and surround my bases with walls, but with a bit of effort, you can easily keep the biters at bay by hand instead of spending a ton of materials on base defenses. With the bugs taken care of, now for sulfur. We'll need it for blue science and sulfuric acid. Routing these pipes is already getting pretty annoying.
It's diagonal, I promise.
I served acid production some sulfur on a plate, then queued red circuits. Using an entire belt for sulfur would be silly, so I'll put it on half of the plastic belt. Time for blue science, but engines are all the way over there. Yeah, let's put it over there instead. To save on science, I'll research productivity modules to put in the labs later. Now that sulfur and engines are side by side, now all we need for blue science is red circuits. Once again, I was going to put them on the left, but we've already brought plastic over to the right now, so I'll just build it over by blue science instead. Sulfur isn't used for anything besides blue science, unless you want to make explosives, but we won't be doing that, so I'll split off plastic onto its own belt to put on the bus. Time to queue the science, along with speed modules, modular armor for bots, and batteries. To make red circuits, we'll need plastic, green circuits, and copper wire. I'll put copper wire in between pairs of circuit assemblers, then in goes all of the belts. That was quick. Next up is mining productivity. It couldn't hurt. With circuits and plastic routed in, and one of the copper belts, we start making our first red circuits. Mixing those together, onto the bus they go, right next to plastic. But then we'll immediately turn them around since we need them for blue science. In goes the assemblers, and that's blue science. Although, we still do have to route it all the way back to the labs. Fun. Science in place, now for advanced oil processing. Oh no. And concrete, don't forget concrete. With advanced oil now in place, now we just need to crack down the extra heavy and light oil. We'll also need to make lubricant for electric engines. Using those electric engines, we'll be able to make bots. I'll queue everything for personal robots. Routing all of the pipes for oil cracking took a lot longer than usual. I built everything too close together, which made it a lot harder, but eventually, that's heavy and light oil cracking. Only one chemical plant for each, since I would rather shave off my own skin with a vegetable peeler than route more pipes around. With the proper amount of lube, it's time to thrust ourselves into blue circuit production, which takes green circuits, red circuits, and sulfuric acid. Personal robots are done. We'll make some after we finish setting up electric engines, but right now I need to bring acid over here. After squeezing it through these smelting setups, time to design the circuit setup, which I'm still researching, but I can use electric engines to show the fluid connections in the meantime. The slope of the pipes didn't quite line up with the input of the assemblers, so it ended up looking pretty ugly, but hey, at least it's ugly. Blue circuits will go on the other side of the engine belt. Before I forget, in goes concrete. We'll need 1,000 of it for the rocket silo. Circuits done and assigned, out they come from the assembly line. For the robots, we'll need robot frames, which takes batteries, steel, green circuits, and electric engines. We won't need that many batteries, so a single chemical plant next to blue circuits will be just fine. Time to put together electric engines, but we need lube for that. I don't want to run another pipe, but luckily I have a horrid solution. Just like how we sushi'd the output of the refineries, we can sushi pipe across the entire base the same way. Running a wire back to keep track of how full the tanks are, we can set this pump to turn on whenever acid gets low. Once the tank is full enough, the pumps will completely empty the pipe, and we can put lube down the pipe instead. It's gross, but it works. Deforestation, then in goes the assemblers for the engines, which I forgot take green circuits. But splitters are lame, so an inserter later, electric engines will replace the old ones on the belt. With those in hand, I can now make some robots to help build this monstrosity of a base, and I'll cue all of the prerequisites for the last two sciences, yellow and purple. Purple science takes rails, so we'll need stone for that. The robots help a little bit, but they'll be better after a level of worker robot speed. With great stone comes bricks, whatever Uncle Ben said. We'll need the bricks for electric furnaces for purple science as well. Bringing everything up to the top, I would start working on purple science, but we're running a bit short on copper, so we'll have to deal with that first. But, blink and you'll miss it, power is short as well. Efficiency modules will help. Copper? I hardly know her. Efficiency modules for the miners, then some upgrades to the smelting arrays to further increase throughput. Purple science. Time to make those rails. Iron for sticks, and steel for, steel. In goes sticks and stones, and out comes rails. Now for productivity modules, which will go right above it. Yellow science. Now for rocket fuel, accumulators, level 2 speed and productivity modules, and level 3 productivity modules. Up goes the circuits, down comes the modules, then electric furnaces went above that, but I signed a non-compete so I can't show them on camera. Now, time to put the purple science into the labs. Luckily, the other side of the blue science belt is open, so I don't need to bring it too far. However, everything is starting to slowly crumble. Our increased circuit production is eating almost all of our iron, so we'll need to start putting productivity modules in everything we can. Rocket fuel is easy peasy, just light oil and solid fuel, and we don't need to belt it anywhere since we only need it for the rocket. The iron squeeze is continuing to worsen. I had to hook up all of the science assemblers to circuit conditions to make sure we didn't make too much. I did keep upgrading the mine though, and I stole some furnaces from purple science to speed it up even more, which sucked back a ton more power, and so on and so forth, upgrading everything I could, but it still wasn't enough. Red circuits are slowly drying up. Luckily, the easiest way to solve any problem is to wait for it to get worse and then panic. So instead of worrying about red circuits, let's start working on yellow science. First up is low density structure. Plastic, steel, and copper. Surely eating all of this steel won't cause even more iron issues, no siree. With low in place, it's time to get high with flying robot frames, which are batteries, electric engines, even more steel, and green circuits. Since we've already set up blue circuits, we're ready to make yellow science. These diagonal undergrounds are giving me a headache. Small detour, power production is running out of coal, which seems like a big problem at first, but we can fix it by removing most of the burner inserters and setting splitter priorities. We weren't actually out of coal, our mining just slowed down due to a dip in power, but just to help a little bit more, I'll add more efficiency modules and make some solar panels. Okay, back to yellow science. In goes the return belt, and out put the inserters. Steel supply is really struggling now, but at least iron plates caught back up. More electric furnaces should do the trick. Why does sulfuric acid have splitter priority? Get that out of here. We're still low on copper though, so blue circuits are starving. Oh well, I'll just wait it out. Let's set up rocket control units. Oh, yeah, you don't need them anymore, I forgot. Well, not much else to do then. I'll just run around and dish out more efficiency modules and stockpile the rocket materials. More iron, and I'll make productivity 3 modules for the silo. Using 4 of them brings down the cost of the rocket a whopping 40%. Speaking of productivity, researching the rocket is 1,000 of each science, which feels a tad out of reach for the ore patches we're mining from, so we'll grab beacons and use less labs with better productivity modules in them. Then we'll speed beacon the crap out of them just to squeeze out a little bit more science per science. Now for the rocket. 2 hours. I'm not waiting that long. More lab speed. More copper. More or less. Speed done. Back to the rocket. 40 minutes isn't too bad, but I doubt we'll be able to keep up that pace. But we're in no rush since we still need to make more blue circuits and low density structure for the rocket parts. More copper yet again, and yet more steel shortages, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, so let's just skip to the good part. Rocket silo. Crap, I forgot I need to make a landing pad too. 60 concrete short. Dang it. Oh, and the satellite. Whoops. Down goes the silo, in goes the ingredients, and then I made all of the accumulators for the satellite. All done. Ready when you are. Blue circuits. Well, they're running at full speed, they're just slow. I can wait. Except, what's up with sulfuric acid? Oh, that splitter had priority for a reason, my bad. Eventually, in goes the last circuits, and up comes the rocket. Time for launch. Just under 10 hours. And down comes the space science. I'd like to take a moment to thank my supporters on Ko-fi. Overall, this run wasn't too bad. There was a couple times I had to scratch my head a bit to figure out how to move items onto the correct side of belts, but other than that, it's not that tricky of a run. The increased iron expense from building so many more belts is definitely noticeable, and it makes the early game not that great, but once you're past that, it's not too bad. Should you try a diagonal run? Well, unless you're going for an aesthetic base, there isn't much of a point to it. Although you will probably learn some of the quirks with inserters on curved belts. Overall, solid 5 out of 10. It's not too hard of a challenge, but it's not super interesting either. If you had to choose between playing this run or going bowling, I would go bowling, and I suck at bowling. But that's all for today. My name's DocJade. Bye-bye.